Hi guys, John here for AVT. Today we're going to be taking a look at the room across the street in Live 1. Okay, there is a lot of really cool equipment that you'll get to play with from this class on to the end of the program. But first you have to learn the video suite. So I'm standing in here with a bunch of cool gear that you may recognize from what we did across the street or might be brand new to you. Okay, to go over all the gear, I'll start up here. Throughout this building, we have what is called a Focusrite, and that brings us Dante. So our Dante network allows us to have audio flowing through network to each room in this building. So our Dante comes in here, and then it fishes down to the Dante network outs and ins. So it's right here. Now these are analog from the digital source, and we can patch them anywhere we need to within this audio patch bay. Here is a TriCaster, which is our switcher over here. Here is a DA, or distribution amplifier, and we have 6 of those. And here's intercom ports that can actually be used for comms. So it's important to have this type of style when you're in a studio setting. You have a more professional way to patch with our TT cables right here. Okay, this is called a TT cable. It stands for tiny telephone, and it simply just clicks in to where you need it to, just like that. Underneath the audio patch bay is the video patch bay. We call this connection a WECO connection, W-E-C-O. And they, just like that, have a patch cable that looks like this. Okay, it looks very similar to coax. It is essentially a coax connection with the WECO connector on it. And we can jump from an output would be on the bottom, an input would be on the bottom, and then an output would be on the top. So it flows through here and patches to here. We're going to go through some points around the building in just a bit that all end up here. Let me show you this right here. These are called our X points. X1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These X points are auxiliary points that we can just patch something to or from, they're both ways, and then bring it into our system or let it leave our system and send it out that way. It is important to note too that this can embed audio with it. So you can throughput audio into things, okay? That can be very helpful. Now in this building, that's not too common because we have a whole Calibrate audio system for our broadcast audio. And again, that comes from the Focusrite into our room. Moving on through the racks here, we have 2 open gear. Open gear are little units, about 2 RU units, that hold a bunch of cards that go this way. And what these units do are different jobs, like a distribution amplifier for audio, distribution amplifier for video, connect to switchers, connect to servers. Rather than having a bunch of individual units that do a lot of one specific thing, this is one unit that does a bunch of different things. So we have 2 of those. Okay. We have one of these in the fly pack over in Live 2, Down here is our big boy. This is called the Evs XS server. Okay, this is where we house media. We will have an entire lecture on just the EVS process because it is so valuable in today's day. This focuses a lot on news and sports, different things like that. If you've ever watched sports and you have an instant replay, this is where that comes from, this server right here. Okay. Moving to the top of the next rack, we have a DVD player. It's not really going to do us much good. It kind of just hangs out there for fun. And this is an old piece of gear too that just takes up rack space. It is a DDR T2, and this is almost comparable. It's by Grass Valley, almost comparable to an EVS. However, it doesn't have the server-like features. This would just be a digital drive recorder that you would bring in content, save it here, and you have the ability to record it or play it back. Now, these are slow. Years ago when I first got into video, you take an hour of footage, it took you an hour to dump that footage. Now, you take an hour of footage, it takes you 10 minutes to offload that clip. Here, you take an hour of footage, it could take you longer than an hour to actually dump it to something because the interface and stuff is very slow. Here we have the Asha Fs2. This is a frame sync device. It is a, I can't tell you how much this thing does. This thing does frame syncing, meaning that it can help if you have issues and you need to align things properly. It has the converting. Okay, it's another way to bring in something to our system. When I bring in something to our system, I did kind of pass over this, but we have a router right here. And if I have an input coming into the Asha, I can route it through a panel like this. And then bring it in and apply that to one of my inputs in my switcher. Down here we have our first of several comms key panels. This is for a 4-wire comm set. This is a KP12. That means there's 12 individual keys. Okay, this would be for the engineer rack. The engineer position, which would be over here. Down here are our CCUs. These are very important. Today we're going to build a camera or two, and we're going to need to have our CCUs on in order to do that. So this is the first place you start when you start creating a camera, is you turn on your CCUs. If they're not on, you will not have power to your camera. We learned this when we did the shading in Live 1. Down here is a TriCaster. It's a TriCaster 8000. It's by a company called NewTek. Okay. And what's interesting about this is it is a Windows computer running switching software. To me, it's kind of a toy, but it is fun to play with. You would never take something like this to broadcast like the NFL or something like that. But what you would do is use this for small services or small events, or throw this in a fly pack like I have in Live 2. Right here I want you to note is the power switch. We're going to flip that up and you should start hearing the fan going. Okay, we are good to go. And once that's up, these little lights light up, and then the drives, this is the hard drives that are built into them, they light up. The reason I find it a toy is because the TriCaster is just software running on Windows, and it does not always is not always stable, and that can be a problem. So when we're not stable and we're trying to trust something, I have easily crashed this system many times. But if you're just doing simple switching, take 1, take 2, take 3, or even more advanced stuff that the TriCaster can do that no other switcher can do, like virtual sets and stuff like that, it's normally stable. It's when you get into more of the programming side, when we build macros and things like that, that the system just comes crashing down on itself. So I don't hate it. I love it. I think it's fun. So over here we have our Sony displays. These are our displays for shading the cameras. As you may remember, we shaded the cameras in Live 1, but we also have to shade it, in Live 2. We also have to shade it here in Live 1. So we have 3 RCPs for the 3 cameras that we have, and then we have the control router of what we want to shade. We want to shade camera 1, 2, 3, so on. Now this is more steady and consistent. Your camera 1 will always be camera 1. You don't have to patch it like we did in Live 2. And a reason for that is this is a permanent install. We don't have a permanent install in Live 2. We have gear that gets up and goes quite often. So what is funny about our system here in Live 1 is that you do need to calibrate. So we're going to turn it on by this little button here and turn it on, and we'll let it warm up. But you have to calibrate these displays in order to get the proper shading. And down here is our luminance and our chrominance scopes. If you remember what they were called, it's a waveform monitor and a vector scope. Now when we get to the waveform monitor, I'll have you come in here. Let it boot up here. And this is a professional waveform monitor. These things don't come cheap. So if we come here, we have 3 different waveforms that we're showing at once. And we don't need that. We're showing bars. But right here, we have this. So what I'm going to do is press and hold the waveform button. You'll have to do this each time. Okay, the waveform button. And then we get this little menu. And let me make sure I'm not blocking the shot here. We're going to come down and we're going to turn off, we're going to leave Y on. Y stands for luminance. And we're going to go to PB, okay, and turn that off. And that's chrominance blue and chrominance red, PR. So we turn these 2 off, and then now we can just hit that. And this is how your waveform monitor should look. Now if you see the junk here, that's just the text at the top. So we're going to let that warm up for a little bit. And we're going to throw bars over here in just a second. We have all this. This is our Ashley mixer. Okay, an Ashley mixer is just different knobs for channels coming in. So your first knob here and that are different channels coming in, and they're going out to these speakers up here at the by the multi-viewers. And this is how you can hear it. Being a more professional install, we don't rely on comms to hear it. We rely on these speakers. And this audio, again, is coming from broadcast. Okay. Down here, we have the routing system. And a default route would be your source being CCU1, which is camera 1, going to TriCaster input 1. So that means on the TriCaster switcher, 1 would be camera 1. Okay. The monitor that you might find here is, at this point, is just to set up comms, and we're going to do a whole other lab on that. Okay. And we have another routing, key panel for comms. And then over there, you can see the big one for the director. That's a KP32. So these are older systems, but that is what we use in here for spreading comms out. A 4-wire system allows for point-to-point communication. So when we talk about that lab, we can actually route each thing. So if the director only wants to talk to the technical director right here, they have the ability to do so. Again, here is our switcher interface. This is just like a MIDI controller. It is just a USB and a power supply, which is a lot different than other things. So up here, in order to get our studio up and running, we have our speakers, these monitors that are hanging on the wall, audio monitors and of course video monitors. There is a switch in the back. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have to feel around for it, and it's up by the power that comes in, but unless you're really tall, there it is, you're not going to be able to reach it. I'm sorry. And please don't stand on chairs to try to get it. Just ask someone who can reach it. Now, once it's on, you get this blue light. We like that blue light. Okay? We need to make sure that audio is functioning the whole time, because this is the audio that is going to be married with the video that we create. So once we have those guys on, blue lights, it's time to turn on these displays. We have 3 drawers here, and you'll notice one is labeled remote controls. We're going to go in here, and you can see we have quite a few remote controls. The one you're going to be looking for is the one that has the green gaff that says monitors, and simply hit on. Sometimes you can get both at once, not always. And there'll be a little white button here, and here we go. So what we're looking for here is to start a session. We're in the class AVT, so we're going to go under that, but you'll see some other classes, and if I was in my EVS lab, I would be doing EVS. Okay, so there's SBP, there's Live Lab, there's BTS, stuff like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter that. If you look at our keyboard and mouse situation, it's not always the clearest what's going on. I will tell you that the Apple keyboard and mouse at this time is for comms, and this HP mouse and this new tech keyboard is for the switcher. As I mentioned before, the switcher is a computer. Okay, it is not a functional switcher like we're used to. Not saying that's a bad thing, but we just have to be aware. So I'm going to click right here, AVT. Not going to do anything special with it. We're going to go live. If we want to manage data, we go here. If we want to use their graphics software, we go here. But right now, we're going to start live production. With that, this guy should light up any moment. There we go. So we have a lot of the different things lit up. And we will come back to this after we set up some cameras and do some lighting. To finish our tour here with the equipment in the video room for Live 1, we have the Evs Desk here. This would be the station where the Ptz Operator would run the server. Okay, they would use this here to control a computer called the IP Director. And that software they use is also called the IP Director. Over here you would have a multi-viewer. Okay, and you can control a lot of the assets of what you're trying to do with this. Now this is a low-level controller for an EVS. In more professional sports and stuff like that, they have far bigger units that allow for the slow motion replay, capturing clips in and out, stuff like that. That's what you do, is you capture a clip in, capture a clip out, and then you can replay that clip instantaneously. What's really important to note, that as long as the EVS server is on, it is recording. So depending on how much time you have, time is also like gigabytes and terabytes. We look at it as how far back can we go. So that's really important to note. Okay. This guy over here would be what's called the LSM, and it does stand for live slow motion, but it's just a hot triggerable way of playing out something. If you had a show and you wanted you would have your opening, welcome to the John Show, and I have my opening every day. Somebody would be here just readying it and playing it out just like that, okay? The director would call for it, and so it would be ready, intro, roll intro, take intro. Just like that. We roll it first, and then we take it because we never want to freeze frame. So we roll it really quick and take it about the same exact time. So you have a little bit of a buffer. You want a little bit of a pad in front of it. But then you take it and you roll with it. Moving down here further on this desk, we also have located our Ptz Operator. Ptz Operator is the operator of the pan tilt zoom cameras. Okay, so they have control of different presets they can create and free control of the pan, the zoom, the tilt of said cameras. Okay. Now we have two here at Live 1, and we can set all the values of shading it just like you would another camera. So these cameras match the cameras that you take out there. Okay. I will show you the hookups. However, we are not going to set up the PTZs today. Hey guys, so we are now in the main hall. We just took a tour of what's going on in the video room. Now, in the main hall, we have to set up our cameras. And there's a lot to set up out here. So whether you're working a live lab or a BTS or this lab, you're going to need to know how to set up things. They're a little bit different. In most ways, they're better, but in some ways, they are, you have to have a little bit different mindset of where you're going with what. Okay. First of all, our tripods and everything are already set up for us. We don't tear these down. We leave them as is. So we set these up. You'll see they're a little bit more robust than what we have in Live 2. Okay. And we're just going to wheel this guy out to where we're going to position the camera. And so for this camera, it's going to be my middle camera. And I think here is a good spot. Okay. Now, if you follow me back to where we were before, you'll actually get to see the cameras. Unlike in Live 2, where they're just in a case, these guys are actually in a road case. Okay? These are the same cameras except for one thing. We do not use fiber over here, at least not yet. We are using triax. Okay? Nice thing about fiber is, well, it has more bandwidth and all that jazz, but there's no female or male end. This one you have to watch that there is a female and male end. So we're going to take the whole case out. And we're going to wheel it. And truth be told, depending on where you're working, cameras could come in either or the case or a road case like this. Okay, so it all depends on where you're working. This is not uncommon to have these on a truck to roll out, keep them safe. Obviously the cameras are thousands of dollars, so we want to make sure that we keep our equipment safe, clean, and healthy. Okay. We open up the box here. Here we find all our gadgetry that we need. We have our zoom control here. We have our focus line, viewfinder. Okay. And I'm going to pick this up now and place this nicely on the floor. And here is our camera. Just nicely take this out. Oops. And there's nothing down here, nothing else. There's a little side pocket here you might want to check for. That is just the eyepiece if you're going handheld with it. So we're going to keep that safe down here. But beyond that, we're good. Going to close that. And then we're going to put the camera down here. I want to show you something. So if you recall the backpack, when we did the camera overview in Live 2, it was much smaller than. Being with the Triax, it just seems to be a lot bigger. The one with the fiber, with the optical con, could actually slide another battery on the back. This one does not accept that. But again, this whole back piece here is to take an ENG camera here and make it a studio camera. And this is a great way to go, because you now have two cameras in one. A lot of times you can buy just studio cameras that have the umbilical cord coming out, whether it's fiber or Triax, or you could just get an ENG camera, which a lot of us have. You know, anything from a camcorder to a DSLR could be considered ENG. Now, having the backpack that converts it allows for a lot more opportunity to have it here, but I can just literally unscrew this here, take it off, and run with it. If there's something I want to grab. Okay, it is hard to control when it's on your shoulders. It weighs a good amount, but you can get really professional shots with it. As always, we need the base plate. Although there are two base plates in here, you'll notice the one does not have the actual sliding plate that goes into the tripod. So this guy is really hanging out here for no reason. We're going to take this, and remember, it points forward. Your arms are in the back, and we're going to slide it in. You hear that nice click. Again, I'm going flush with it. You can see I'm going to start in this position, and I'm going to go flush with it. Because if you look at this camera here, you can tell that most of that weight is in the back. We're going to lock it off. Now this guy's not going anywhere. Unlock our pan and our tilt, and we're not sliding anywhere. Okay. Our tilt and pan resistance is way up. So these knobs here control resistance. There we go. No resistance. Resistance is fine when you're working with it, but when you're not, you gotta be careful. Now, I will tell you something, that this tripod, I can feel it already, that this lock is loose. Students abuse these. I understand you may not know how to run a camera all the time, or you forget things, and one of the most important things is to never run a camera locked. So somebody ran a camera locked. And now this won't, the pan won't completely lock. There is a button in the back of this tripod, and I'm not quite sure why, but a slide that we can slide over, and now it just locks the head. And for the safety of our camera, there's this button here, if you guys didn't catch that. For the safety of our camera, I'm going to turn that on so it doesn't move as I'm putting the camera on. Pick the camera up like this, guide it in that way. There's these two little guide rails here and the triangle. And then what you want to make sure is you're getting that back clip to this back clip here. And we click it in. And what a satisfying click that is. Now I'm going to take that safety lock off and just see where we're at right now. And actually we're pretty balanced, which isn't a great thing at this stage because we still have a lot of nuanceical things to put on, but I'm pretty sure we can do pretty well and keep it balanced. Okay. First thing I want to put on is a viewfinder. This is no different than when we set up in Live 2. Kind of reverse, you're going clockwise with this to tighten it. And then this cable here is going to the front where you see the VF. It's hard to see. And it's going to plug in like that. Next, we'll do the zoom control, the focus control, excuse me. Same thing as in the cameras in Live 2. It's the same lens, same everything. Your focus control and your zoom control are all based upon your lens. So if I had a Canon lens, they would look a lot different than this. This is a Fujion. So, which this lens is meant for this camera specifically, and would not fit on any other camera. However, this camera, just tightening it on like that, this camera can fit other lenses. Squeaky. Remember to keep these parallel. Put it through. Try to get it on that rubber gasket. You can see the rubber gasket to avoid this. If it falls apart in your hands, there's no biggie. We can just put it back together. Sometimes it might not feel like it's tightening, so put your finger down here and hold the screw. Again, keeping these two bars here parallel. Okay, now we can go. I'm twisting the wheel, and as you can see on the wheel, that is going. Next would be our zoom control. And if you work with cameras outside of Live 1 and Live 2, there will be different cameras, like in the Venue and the Fortress. So it is important to remember that you will need to know how to set those up independent of setting these cameras up. Okay. Just different hardware, different technology. And going from there. So this one fell apart. I'm not too concerned. Okay. I know I need to go like this and put it on like that. So my first concern here is I want to take the bottom one and click it in. I'm not going to over tighten it. I just want that. And then I squeeze this top part so I can get the threading into here. Nope. And that's okay. Sometimes you have to push hard. Sometimes it just doesn't want to go. This would be the trickiest step of all of them. I'm actually going to back out the bottom one and see if I can get more threading for the top. And it seems I could. Sadly, I'm actually beginning to feel that this is stripped, but we're going to persevere, see what else we can get. Yeah, I believe this one's stripped. Let's just do a quick test without the brackets. And it holds after a certain point, so you can tell though, if we look here, someone hasn't been treating it too well. The first few rivets where it should grab is not grabbing. And this is what I mean when we have to respect our equipment, especially on the job. We only get so much. And if you're the one breaking equipment, it's not gonna fare too well for you. There we go. Just put some elbow grease into that and we're good to go. Now we're going to run this up under here, the little opening here. Goes outward. So you can just kind of feel it. And that goes in. Try not to twist the pins too much. I had older cameras when I used to teach some labs, and if you twist the pins at all, they literally just snap off. So, last thing I want to do, we're a little top heavy, but I'm going to level it. There's a button on the side here. I'm going to push that button to illuminate this. And I want this in the middle. There we go. Now we're pointing back a little. So we're still back heavy. A few ways to address this. If we bring these guys down, no, that's not going to help us. We can scoot the plate forward just a bit. Didn't go forward much. And lock it in place, as always. And there you have it. Now, to be honest, we're already back heavy, and we still have to add a heavy part to the back. So I wanted to make sure that we could kind of combat that before we do it. And the next part then would be the triax. So this triax would technically be the female end, okay? And that would plug into here. We're not going to start there. We're going to start back here. So these are panels that you're going to find all through the building. And right now we have T1 and T2, and that's triax, no, excuse me, T3 and T4, excuse me. And that is triax 3 and triax 4. Around here you'll also find audio 9 and 10, and those are female, and audio 11 and 12, and those are male, and these are actually used for comms. We'll get to that in the next lecture, lab. V9, V11, V10, and V12 are points on that patch bay that I showed you, and we can take anything in and out of that. So a lot of times during BTS and live labs, you're going to run V12 to a display that would be up here for the lighting console. So right on the other side of this Grand MA, you'll see a line that can be run right there. Now it's already terminated to be multi-viewer, so you don't have to worry about that. However, what you just have to worry about running the line if you're a video person. I showed you that one, but let's take a look at some of the other ones. Here is post 1 and has A1, A2, A3, and A4. A3 and A4 are comms. We have our post for another camera. So if we had another camera set up, that would be camera 1. Okay, would go to post 1. And we have the V lines, V1, V2, V3, and V4, and same thing. We can pump out anything. We could put a display to it. We could send signal into it and then patch that into the switcher. It goes both ways. Okay? So these are all really important. So this would run to a camera that would be on the house left. Now over here, we have T2. So we just looked at T1. Here's T2. In the back panel is T3 and T4. We have audio lines again. 7 and 8 are both comms. Okay. Now, I don't know really what 8 would feed as far as comms go. The other one would be like lighting and audio and all that. So we have it as an auxiliary comms unit. Maybe if you had the jib set up on this side, this is for the 2-wire comms. Then we have V5, V6, V7, V8, and again, auxiliary for whatever we need. Okay. And there's one last panel I want to show before we go ahead and plug in this triax. So while we're back here, we're looking at a few different things. First, I want to make mention of the Ptz cameras. With Ptz cameras, you need to send 2 SDIs to each of them. Well, one would technically be a BNC because it's not handling the video protocol, but it would be video and sync. Now for camera 4, which is our first Ptz, we send control. Control comes from the panel itself through this network connection and goes right to the Ptz. Then we jump from that as far as control goes, and you see there's no control here, and that's how we get control from looping out. But you still have to send video and sync. So these require long SDI, BNC connections. I made you take note earlier of the X points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is just a way to get things from upstage here all the way down to around the stage. So a lot of times we can feed the LED wall from here, or we can feed displays that we have for iMag, something like that. Okay. Don't be worried about the SAP 10, 11, and 12. Those aren't really functioning for what we need, nor preview or program. Okay. This section can be bypassed. But what we do want to watch is our T points, T1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you guys remember that T1 was house left, T2 was house right, T3 and T4 were in the middle of the house, front of house, and that's where we're going to plug CCU1 in. So what I have to do is actually take this out. These are the feeds that are coming right from the CCU, and I have to plug in that feed up, so it goes through the ceiling into that, and now I'm going to plug it in to T3. If I didn't do this, camera would do nothing. CCU1 is on, this is live and active. Now I just need to plug it in and go from there. So now we have triax in hand, and we're going to go right to T3. As you remember before, that's where I routed CCU1 to. And we'll shove it in. It's locked into place. And I will tell you, these suckers, they lock. So sometimes it's really hard to get them to unlock. Now that we have the cable ran from the T point in the back there, we are going to plug it into here. And it is in, okay? Now, it is nice to take this, the tie line that's used to tie it up, and just kind of make a loop to add some strain relief. Strain relief is your best friend. Excuse me as I tie this. Okay. Now when you're ready to take this off, a lot of students struggle with it. And I will tell you that it does a doozy on your thumb. But you have to push these little stairs up and pull it out. And if you even look at my thumb, it does that. So it's a little bit of elbow grease and you can get it in and out. It's not as nice as the fiber, but Triax is still very common in the industry. Now the limitations to Triax is it can't run as far. Fiber we can run per miles. And it only goes up to 1080p. Oh, excuse me, 1080i. So we hit the max with the what we're doing here. Okay. So that being said, we are going to, if we would ever upgrade our cameras or anything like that, we would have to upgrade the whole infrastructure of this building. And that holds people back. That's why you sometimes see older equipment in facilities. Because it's not just, I bought a new camera, it's, I bought a new camera, now I have to change everything. Okay? So once again, what's coming through this, in this building, is audio, video, data for iris control in Tally, and comms. So unlike Live 2, comms come through here, and when we get to the comms lab, we're going to note about plugging comms in right here. And then you have your comms controls right here. Now you're not technically a 4-wire key panel, however you would still be able to be accessed individually because it goes through the CCU. Okay, that's all I have for setting up out here. The next part is going to be shading, and we're going to get to that right now. All right, guys, so I'm here at the engineer station where we see our displays up. Right now they're showing me the same thing. This is going to show me whatever is in program on the switcher. And then this is whatever I select down here. So we're going to right now start with our chip chart. You guys should be familiar with this. We talked about a chip chart before. This one has a few more colors. It has the tertiary colors between everything just to get a better color balance. If we go to our vector scope down here, you can see there's more points than before. It still needs a little bit of work as far as shading goes. But before we can shade, we need to calibrate these monitors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to CCU1, or the RCP for CCU1, and I'm just going to hit bars. I'm going to turn on the panel first, and then I'm going to hit bars. Okay, so now we see we're using CCU1 as these bars. I have to calibrate both of these. Anytime you sit down, and you're new at the engineer, you want to calibrate these displays. This is your job, okay? So the first thing I want to do is F1 for brightness, F2 for contrast, F3, excuse me, we're going to skip F3, we're going to go to F6, back to F3, and then we'll do the, I'll bust it out there, and then we'll do the chroma, okay? And that's all you need to do. F4 is just adding an extra interfield. F5, well, that just looks ugly. And then F7 tries to change your input. So F1, F2, F6, back to F3. We're going to turn F6 off for right now. We're going to go back to F1. So what I'm looking at here is a few things. If we press this button again, that little display goes off. And we need that. Down here are 3 lines. You can see them in the actual waveform monitor. Boom, boom, boom. -7, 7, +7. And what I'm going to do is actually brighten this up until I can see the +7 only. And there you go. Now that might be very difficult for you to see at home, but right here is a line that's showing up. If I go any brighter, you'll see all 3 lines. So we want to keep that just like that. The other thing we want to do is keep this white. That's pure white. That's 100% white right here. If we look at the percentages down here, 100% is right here, 0 is here, 50 is here. That is 100%. So I am going to tune it just a little bit. That looks good for now. Now we're going to go over to F2. And a lot of this is by taste. You have to get a feel of what you're looking for. So I'm going to turn up the chrominance. But as I'm doing that, I'm bringing some of this black here so I can actually go, the contrast, excuse me, I can go back and bring it down. And we're getting a good image here. Okay? Everything looks solid so far. Now we go to F6, then we make it black and white, and back to F3 for the chroma. What I need to do is have these bars match that down there. So this lighter gray, almost white, to this gray here. And I'm going to do that by bringing this down. And this right there, that's a good spot, is set. You cannot go by these numbers each time you sit down, okay, because it's a different signal coming in. You need to make sure when you are doing this that it is done properly, step by step, and you look over it. Now you turn that off, turn all of these off, oops, and there you go. I have a well-calibrated display. And if we look at both of these displays here, they look like they match. Now I'm ready to shade. So what I'm going to do is turn off the bars here on CCU 1, and it gives me my chip chart. So this is our live camera feed. Okay. Turn that off. Guess I'm not turning that off. Okay. So we always start by closing up everything, making sure we zero out the panel. I'm zeroing this out to 0 black. Okay. We want our shutter off. Everything else, master gain looks good. Everything else like that. Okay, so we're good so far. Our iris is closed, and it's just kind of a decent habit to just make sure it's closed by hitting the close button. Now, first step is to black balance. When we hit black balance, we're going to look at all the screens and they're going to go funky. Okay. This is finding the blackest black in the camera. Okay. Didn't move much. But now it's my job to take this line that's hovering above 0 and bring it down a little bit. Let me show you this again. This line here hovering above 0 and bring it down like that. That ended up at a -7 right here. Now it's safe to deselect closed and push our iris up till we can hit 100. But if you look at this, I want these stair steps to be even. I want this to be an even X across. So we're starting to bend. So I need to bring it down a little bit. Sometimes that tells me I should probably white balance, but this might be what we get. We don't have too much light on the chip chart, so that can always affect it. If you have a lot of light on it, it's hard to keep it from being 100. So it all depends. Now that I have it even, which is more important than getting it to 100, because that means that all the grayscale here and here are even steps. I'm going to hit white balance. The white balance again is right next to the black balance, and we're going to hit that, and there we go. Now both these changed at once, and if we look at our vector scope, we're primarily in the middle. This vector scope kind of leans this way. Okay. We can gain it up on this one and see a better representation that each step is kind of like that. Now I do notice a few things that the blue and controls are on. So what I can do is just quickly re-white balance again, and it takes me back to where I was. Okay. And now I'm a little further up. Maybe I can push it just a little further. Starting to bend again. I'd like things to go to the 50, but we got what we got. And it looks pretty good. Okay, so that is shading in Live 1. Don't forget, when we set these up, we have to warm these displays up for a little bit. And then we also need to turn this on, but under your waveform monitor, turn off that parade by turning off PB and PR. Just another reminder. Next, we're getting into switching. All right, guys, so we are going to go over the switcher in Live 1. And as I mentioned before, this brand is called TriCaster, made by a company called NewTek. It is a little bit different than traditional switchers. It has a lot going on, and I'd like to kind of go into the basic features of it so you can get up and running if you have a live lab or you're doing BTS or something like that. It's really helpful to see also how a switcher can differ from one to another. Okay, so this is a software switcher, meaning that all the switching goes through the software. Right down here we have our preview row. We have 8 inputs in total. However, we have other things that we could bring in, like DDR 1 and 2, and that is videos that you can play right off of this, or GFX 1 and 2, and GFX 1 and 2 would be stills that you can just plop right in and play them out as if they're a source. And what I want to show you here is that we have 1 through 8 MEs. Now you might remember me talking about the switcher in Live 2 that only had 2 MEs. ME1 on the top, ME2 on the bottom. This doesn't work that way. This is just your preview program bus, and then up here this acts as a digital 8 ME switcher. So I could select the different MEs right from here and put what I want in them, which is really peculiar, but really helpful if you're trying to build really awesome things. One thing you do build in the MEs, and you'll get to this in later classes, is virtual sets. Virtual sets allow you to be on a green screen, sitting at a desk, and you can set up IFBs from there in order to be announcers. We do this in the sports broadcasting class. Okay, so let's go over what we need to know. Well, obviously I need to know that if I'm on program, my camera 1 is live right now. And if I go to 2 is in preview, and then I just hit take, and they switch. Okay, and what's really cool is you can see this all happening inside the software at the same time. A lot of times we start in black, as I tell you, and then we auto to your first camera source. Here you have to be careful because there's so many different transitions. So we need to make sure we're on fade and auto like that. If you go to the transition source, you can see this in the software, you have so many different transitions to choose from. A lot of people love the sheep. So let me get ready camera 2 and auto, and I get the sheep. Seems completely useless to me. However, it's fun. And that's what I was saying, as the TriCaster is a toy. It can do a lot of really cool things that other switchers can't, like these really awesome media wipes. If we go up here, one of my favorite ones, we'll have to cut this and go to New Tech. Oh. There's tons of sports ones. There's that. I'm looking for an alien hand. Don't know what that would be labeled under, but we have some really in-depth transitions that we can use. And there's packets, more and more, and other software that works with this. So if you want to do this, you can even create your own. You can create your own for most switchers. It's just how you load it in is a lot different. Let's get out of this, move on, and we can also see that we have an FTB button. When we end our show, we want to fade to black. So it's a quick way of hitting FTB and fading to black. So we ready that, auto trans to black. Now the next thing up is our program row, of course, and that's what's going to be live on air. And then our DSK, and that stands for downstream key. So our DSK can be any one of these, and we have 4 DSKs to apply it to. So look at these as buckets. I'm going to take my first bucket, and I'm going to put in that bucket camera 1. And now I can come over here and auto trans that bucket, or take that bucket, and you'll see camera 1 comes. The camera 1's really big. I want it smaller. So I can take camera 1, come up here, position scale, you don't want to. Oh, there we go. Thank you. And bring it down and bring it over. So you can build multiple things with this. You can build so much because it has 8 MEs. So if I go to ME1, which is our next step up here, an ME stands for mix effect. And they take that to the extreme. You can either have your ME be a mix, where it mixes this to this, program to preview, or it's layers. We're going to leave it a mix for today. And if I take 1 and 2, and I half dissolve it, I can come down here to my ME1, ready it, and take that. We'll auto out our other one, and then now this is just being controlled by the ME, but it's layered down here. Okay. There's a lot more you can do with this. These delegates here are for, if you have layers, it'll be A, B, C, and D, or layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when you get into other graphics, you'll have live shots, and you can animate those shots. We're not going to touch upon that today. And then, of course, the DSKs for those are right here. You fill your bucket, and right here you take your bucket live. One thing that's really cool is I could come down here, and if I wanted to, I can play or stop my DDRs, or go to the next GFX if I have one. What I can also do is ready GFX 1 and take GFX 1. And now that's on the switcher itself. Most switchers don't allow you to put that many frames inside of it. So this one allows you to put whatever media you want. I can go looking into other classes and pull media from their class if I wanted to preview or program that stuff. Okay. So that's the basic overview of a switcher. We're going to stick in this realm here for now. When you start getting out to things like that, it starts becoming a lot more confusing. So as always, I'm going to ready black, and I'm going to hit fade, auto to black.